Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar Wednesday. Today's presenter is Shreen. He's the founder at Starlight, and they are a mission-driven public benefit corporation in QSO that helps credit unions connect members to critical financial resources. Shreen previously spent a decade at Google building data, machine learning, and cloud solutions. He now leverages that experience to expand access to financial assistance and strengthen member financial health through community-focused technology. Shireen, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thanks so much, and excited to meet all of you. I'm the founder and CEO of Starlight. We are QSO, as Dean mentioned, that helps kind of put you at the center of deepening your member relationships by helping serve them financially when they're struggling. What that means really is we are about proactive relief and real results for membership. And the reason Starlight exists is we realize that millions of households are leaving money on the table that they're qualified for that could really help them in times of need. And if you can bring that to them proactively through the credit union, we help sort of deepen that relationship between us and our membership. Let me give you like a real example to kind of just walk back to one of our local Massachusetts credit union members who we work with, where, she's a home health aide, husband drives for a local delivery company, and they got two kids, and they're bringing home about 70,000 a year. A family of four in Massachusetts needs about 109,000. It's quite significant when you think about cost of living in Massachusetts. There is actually available assistance of food, utility, childcare, and more that she could be qualified for if she applied for it, but she didn't know that it's available. But a credit union could bring this to her and help her find it. Let's kind of rewind a minute and just talk about what's happening with the economy. And that's kind of something that, we talked about with Dean and the team at CCUA before. The working class Americans are actually in a very interesting and difficult spot where a lot of households are asset limited, income constrained, and employed. We call it ALICE, and some of you might have already come across this in your work in community development or as trainers. But a lot of households are actually struggling to make ends meet. And part of the reason is that the challenges that people face in terms of budget, inflation, and costs has not kept up with labor and wages, which means that, what historically a credit union was serving middle class who had like high savings, owned a home by the time they're 28, 30, and then had a sort of a very different retirement path. The modern homeowner is like nearly 40, not 30, and they're also struggling financially in a lot of ways. And so the challenges that the members we serve have changed. And the question is like, how do we make sure our products adapt and keep up with that challenge? And this is kind of, often in the news, and we all see it consistently, whether it's like folks living paycheck to paycheck, folks struggling to make ends meet, not having $400 in savings. And so this is like something that's really important for us to kind of think about and realize that this is actually kind of the bulk of the membership of almost all the credit unions in the US today. And so the question becomes, how are we able to understand their challenges and deepen that relationship when they're in a different financial picture than we might have expected when we thought about our product set, which has been fairly consistent for like 20 or 30 years. And then one really, really important piece of research that like kind of guides a lot of what Starlight does is that in a longitudinal survey of members over 5 years, they saw that only 17% of US households actually were um, kind of zero bad years financially. And several had one bad year or two bad years. And then 47% are like 5 years where they're like financially struggling. So if you kind of think of this as our membership, it's more like in a 5 year period, almost all of our members need some form of assistance or are coming to us with these questions. And so that's something that we spend a lot of time thinking about. And then the other piece here is, card balances are up. People are spending money not on like frivolous things, but on medical bills, car repair, home repair, insurance, things like this. And food and gas are just at an insane clip in how they're growing up in price. So the average household is struggling, and we are seeing that in our membership. And I'm curious if, like, as we think about what you all are seeing, I'm curious if you see this in your membership, in your conversations at your branch, at your call center, and in your interactions with membership. And I think the thing that we've seen a lot with the credit unions we work with, both about like what they're doing with their members, is that they're seeing between 5 to 10% of their calls coming into the call center ends up being about economic hardship and people struggling. Collections teams obviously see it like 90% of the time. And so we see this as like a really big piece of like how we start to see members struggling. And then lately we've seen people talk about taking loans for essential bills. And so it's something that a lot of our credit unions we work with around the US and especially in the Northeast as well have talked about. And then meanwhile, there's about $100 billion in unused household spend assistance that's available that doesn't get utilized. And this hits almost all of the key pie chart of spend that your average household has, whether it's housing, transportation, food, healthcare, utilities, and there's programs for a lot of them. And the challenge for an average household that's kind of juggling two jobs and making ends meet with their families is that they don't know or can grasp all of the programs available and know how to access them. And so we see this as like a huge challenge, but also an opportunity because if you put this money in the hands of households who need it, they're going to be in a much more stable state and become much more deep members and also much more loyal because they see us showing up as a credit union to find them assistance as well. Just as an example of two programs, right? There's like a significant amount of childcare assistance that's available that's not being used. There's a significant amount of utility assistance of over $6.5 billion in LIHEAP, and there's another like 12-ish billion across utilities who are ready to help folks, right? And so, for example, like we saw Webster's out in Massachusetts, so like National Grid has a program that's highly underutilized that supports members with gas costs during the winter. And the challenge is that there's like, you go to their site, there's like 14 programs in Massachusetts. And it's really hard to navigate which ones make sense, which one am I eligible for, how can I get it? And so we often see that households are leaving money on the table that they could actually receive assistance for, but they just don't know how to get it. And so it's something that we've seen a lot. And I'm sure like across this call, especially like, with the backgrounds of some of you on the call, and I know Jen probably sees this a lot, like in the community, we see a lot of folks talking about and needing financial assistance of different kinds. And so that brings you to kind of like saying, okay, how can we like think about serving these members and helping them? And that's where, Starlight's core thesis is like, how do we like deeply understand member financial health and think about how we can serve them and do that in a proactive way while deepening your relationship with your credit union. And so a lot of what Starlight's obsessed with is like bringing this awareness, clarity, guidance, and support to the members proactively through you as the delivery mechanism, as the credit union. And I don't mean you as in like training your team or staffing you up. It's more like a digital service that actually enables us to serve the membership in a really proactive and member-centric way. And so behind the scenes, what Starlight's able to do is we understand each one of these areas, whether it's utilities, housing, groceries, childcare, unemployment, healthcare, cash assistance, or disaster relief. And we go and understand the eligibility process and the application process for a lot of these programs. Then we actually say, how can we bring this to life with the credit union where you're at the center of this deep relationship with your members, but they might not be ready for a car loan or might not be ready for a financial product that we historically have had. But what if we help them with some of these urgent needs? We saw this recently with one of our credit unions who was seeing that one of their key segs was doing a layoff and 10% of the staff was going to be impacted. And so they were like, hey, can we actually surface and guide them through unemployment applications? Which is probably what the member really needs at that moment, far more than they need anything else. Or when there was a tornado in St. Louis, our credit union there immediately was able to spin up Starlight to serve them in disaster relief with tornado relief and what's available for them. Or we did this in Massachusetts when the SNAP shutdown happened with Metro Credit Union, where we were able to immediately bring to life solutions for members facing stress, offer them assistance, guide them to the nearest food assistance services when SNAP was shut down, and things like that. And so really like, a lot of what we are obsessed with is thinking about how can we become proactive in our service of members and do this without having to put a heavy burden on your teams, both in a technology and a process sense, and also in like a staff and training sense. And that drives growth, retention, and engagement. Because at the end of the day, if we're able to serve members in really meaningful ways through proactive navigation, AI powered benefits navigation and guidance, then they're in a much better stage financially to support themselves and support their membership and their financial success. And the kind of underlying thesis here is, we're able to bring you guys at the center of this relationship with your membership and being able to serve them and find out everything they can qualify for, guide them through it, help them support it. And this real support is something that like really accelerates what credit union staff actually already does a lot, which is you're able to like offer assistance if members need it, bring that deeper relationship, and so to show the value of being your local credit union. We've done this with over, 20, 25 million almost that we've identified from members and helped them claim. And then we've also helped build that trust and relationship with a lot of the functions that you have at the credit union as you serve membership and think about how you can accelerate their impact. To give you a sense of how this works, we are able to kind of take a little context from you about the member based on their financial picture, their account history with you, And then we can identify if their household structure, which might be like ages of kids, ages of seniors at home, and location matches up with exactly what benefits they qualify for. And what's really interesting here is, we can almost identify the exact benefits you're qualified for, highlight how you apply for them, tell you about, almost the challenges of like going through this process and make you feel supported with guidance and assistance from our team. And then that also gives all the way to like videos on how to create applications, gather your documents, pull all of this together. And a lot of our thinking is like, how can we help you be proactive and almost like being this sort of supportive employee or staff member for your members when they need help? And what this does for the members is kind of remarkable is that they can see you in a totally different light of the fact that you can actually help them in a variety of needs stages in their life beyond just when they need a car loan. And there's a lot more you can do for them. And a lot of the credit unions we met with already have this ethos in the way they operate, the way they talk to their members, the way they talk about who they are. This allows you to just digitally deliver and kind of execute on what we've talked about a lot in our communication with our membership. Behind the scenes, we also obviously use SMS, in-app and digital banking messaging and email to like reach and communicate with our members and support them through this process because we don't want to like make this burden fall on your team from a communications perspective. And then what we're covering is like utilities, childcare, SNAP, and a lot of the groceries and things like that that you see up here that are like the key expenses that we're able to kind of tackle and think about. And how we do this is we have a depth of data and insights behind the scenes where we're scraping and tracking all this using our engineering team. And then we also have personalized guidance, which supports you in applying and navigating every program you qualify for. And then we have our specialists who are able to chat and support your members through this process in English and Spanish, because we realize that that sort of high value of like being involved with Starlight is that we're able to serve your members really effectively and give them the assistance they deeply deserve and make it really easy for them to access it. And then, the other side is, sometimes we've actually learned from our credit unions and built and evolved our products. So a good example here is we saw that a lot of our credit unions were like, hey, we have staff members who actually might want to run and support our members directly. Can you help us do that? And so we were like, of course we can. And so this, what you're seeing on screen is something that came out of really, really good feedback from some of the credit unions we launched with, who wanted to bring a tool that faces our staff to enable them to like immediately offer assistance to our members. And this ranges from like finding them things like childcare, SNAP, or Medicaid, and then texting it to them and then telling them, hey, I know we just rejected you for a loan, or we're in a coaching session with them. And we might be in a community outreach relationship with a nonprofit that's in our ecosystem. But how do we then bring value to that member immediately and support them? And so that evolved from a lot of conversations with both members and staff that led to this. And from like a very implementation kind of model, we think of this as a very fast thing we can bring to life for especially small credit unions who are like nimble and quick, but also project fatigued. We can go live in under 2 weeks with custom marketing assets ready for you to bring this to life. We also integrate with a lot of key QSOs and partners and like are continuing to build these out because we want to make it extremely turnkey for you. And then we've got a lot of data that we can bring back to you about your members' household picture, their household income, and the ability for you to deepen relationships because you can be like, hey, Shree actually makes 47K. We only see one of his accounts, his partner's account's not at our credit union. Can we bring him into Webster and have him talk to us? Can we like think about how that relationship can grow? And then, of course, really, we're like a digital version. And this is something someone told me in like when he just started the company in the first year of it. They're like, you're like a digital version of people helping people. And I think that's like how we think of ourselves at the end of the day is we're helping bring that mission to life. Now, where does this fit into the credit union? Um, so far, we found really interesting use cases, and I've named a few of them, but I'm sure several folks in this call probably have new ideas. One is around collections and lending, where you're seeing members in financial stress. We see it in marketing. We're able to bring this to life to help bring young members into the door, partner with like SEG and business development teams. We also see it as important for onboarding because when a member joins a credit union, what are we bringing of value to him right away? It's really big for advocacy. And I know that CCV and Dean and the team have spent a lot of time thinking about this question. And we think there's a huge opportunity to accelerate the mission of the credit union movement in our region by talking about how we amplify the members' financial health. And then finally, if you're in low income or CDFI markets, a lot of what Starlight does is to offer you a way to kind of really serve the low to moderate income members that you want to serve and continue to build a relationship with them beyond just lending. Starlight expanded nationwide just about a few months ago. This is probably an update for even Dean and the CCUA team. We were previously hyper regional with only like, sort of initially 10, 15, and 30 states, but we expanded to all 50 states and also in Puerto Rico and DC. And to kind of put this into real words and pictures, we talk about this as like available for your staff. We found that a lot of our staff at the credit unions we work with also have personal experience of thinking about this problem, navigating this themselves, navigating this for a family member. And so that's been something that's been very critical as we think about how do you proactively help your staff? Well, it's help them give the supports they need to support their life and their families. We saw that during the crisis, we had really, really high engagement when the SNAP shutdown happened in November, December. And we were able to support a lot of members through the financial challenges and bring this to life for them. But Tracy was talking a little bit about how she's seen Starlight sort of amplify her credit union's mission here in the Northeast and in Boston and in Northern Mass, and being able to kind of bring member impact to the center, and then also bring this proactivity piece to a lot of their members. Out here as well, Rockland used it a lot to activate indirect members, where we saw that they were able to take a lot of the indirect members who were not deeply engaged with the credit union and bring them back in with a 20% conversion rate of like re-engaging with the credit union and bringing them to life. We saw Am Federal out in New York, which was able to find real money for over $13,000 in like real savings for members, that we partnered with the local utility program and helped members apply for it. And again, it's about dignity and security and standing with those who serve others. And so a lot of what we think about is like, how are we amplifying your ability to stand in the community and serve your membership? Also do it from a product sense and a digital delivered sense that accelerates that impact and serves the members really effectively. When you zoom out and think about this, right? And this is from probably like a month ago, I think I was just pulling a lot of these stats. When we talk about the credit union difference, we talk about jobs, we talk about billions of dollars in consumer financial impact, and we talk about economic impact. Starlight is just helping you accelerate that. We've got ways to go. As you can see, we're like a small QSO that's growing, but our ability to contribute to your impact on your community, your region, and also the nationwide impact of credit unions is a big piece of why we exist. And so we think of this as a really important way to think about the economic challenges households face. And especially if you think about the current climate and you read the news in the last week, you're always seeing talk about the impact of inflation, of blue and white collar jobs disappearing, and how that's a really big stressor for households. So this allows us to almost like bring real answers to the table when members are thinking about these questions. And then we're continuing to innovate. We're a tech company that's thinking about how do we then continue to improve this, right? One example is, we're innovating and thinking about automation so that you can support your members in applying for programs that are complicated. We're filling in what we can consentfully with member data and say, can we understand who you are, understand your context, and then bring this to life and submit this. We do this in a very compliant and privacy safe way because we recognize that, as regulated institutions, the credit union has to have really careful designs and controls for managing this. So we've been thinking a lot about our SOC 2 Type 2, designing our infrastructure to be business critical, and ensure that we center the member experience and make it really smooth for them as well.
I do have a question though, for you. So for the credit unions that have enrolled with you so far, how are you finding that they're rolling it out? Is it through their branch retail staff? Is it through the business development officers? Are they reaching out to the local agencies that are listed as part of that group?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would say it's been a really good learning curve for me to watch how credit unions use our platform. Because, we started with probably a hypothesis of how we thought every credit union would use it. And honestly, we learned a lot along the way because we started with saying it's going to be primarily lending teams who are doing rejection and collections teams. Then we said, oh, it's going to be member experience. But what we saw is that different credit unions, based on the demographics, used it very differently. So one of our credit unions is in a university, and a lot of the staff of the university, not like the professors, but a lot of the janitorial staff, the people who are driving and moving machinery, mail, things like that, they were very qualified. So they were using it as part of their set conversation to go into the university and talk to their staff. A different credit union, which has a really strong low-income branch opening that they had, used it as part of the almost like the on-ramp for any new member who arrived at the new branch that they just opened, because they saw it as the staff would bring it up to members very easily. In one of my credit unions, it's like 80% low to moderate income. So every single branch, every single staff member is able to bring it up in conversations with members, both on call center or in branch, and also on digital through emails and text to their membership. With some of the other credit unions, like which have very strong seg relationships, their business development team has taken the collateral we've given them and have used that to go into segs and have conversations with them to bring it up. And then the ones that are more data savvy are able to almost analyze a member file and be like, oh, you know what? I found 16% of my members have used courtesy pay or missed a payment in the last 6 months. Let's reach out to them and see if we can help them. And then that becomes almost like an ongoing campaign that's running continuously. So that there's been a very interesting spread. I mean, the most interesting example for me, which I found really compelling, was there's a credit union in upstate New York who put it on top of their statement in like the top of the statement with the QR code to scan. And it was a really interesting way to get it in front of a lot of members. And then one of them did a postcard campaign for a new field of membership expansion that they had to a new county. And they were like, well, we're new here. And we know that this is actually a low income county. Let's actually think about serving the members there with something that's very relevant for them. And this is their first product they hear about from the credit union. And so we kind of seen it both for existing members and prospective members, and also different departments kind of leaning in or leaning out in different ways.
Okay.
Um,
Uh,
the most compelling thing that we found that's worked really well is actually if staff is able to use it once, they'll see how fast and quick it is. And then they're like, oh, and now I can talk about this to all the members. And then it's a little bit of a sensitive conversation because people don't always want to talk about their financials with everybody. So some of the conversations about like making it disarming and comfortable so you can deepen the relationship with your members.
how many credit unions are you working with up in New England at this time?
New England, we have two live, and we're talking to like three or four more who are like in conversations about coming on stream as well.
Okay.
Well, I
And are
guess
they
so. I was gonna say two in Massachusetts. We've got some which are in the broader region, but not in CCUA because they're in like New York. We've got a couple,
okay?
and then we've got Connecticut, and we've also got two in Massachusetts, and then we're trying to find more of our credit unions because our logic is we have to find a way to serve 60 to 70 million Americans, leaving $100 billion on the table and give it to them. And so our goal is to like kind of accelerate how quickly we get to them. And a lot of it is about leaning in with credit unions who already kind of have that deep mission alignment and are like, hey, we want to serve our members anyway.
Right, right. So it's finding the right partner and the people that already have that outreach into those underserved communities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or in some cases, then I'll give you a very honest example. There's one credit union that actually was not in the underserved community. They were historically like a fairly rich seg, but then they went to community charter a few years ago and then they're expanding into a new area. And they're like, we don't really have the right products. We've been busy investing in wealth management. We haven't been investing in products and services for the low to moderate income members. And the population's financial stability has gone worse, right? So it's almost like they haven't done anything different, but the middle class has become less middle class and become more struggling class in some ways because of the way the US economy has gone. And so
Right.
they're like, we have to adapt. And so their CEO actually saw us at a presentation and just was like, hey, I want to use this to like take our credit union in a direction to serve the community in a much more deep way. And so we've grown with them and learned a lot because they were like going and investing in the community and opening branches in the new area. And this is one of the larger credit unions in Massachusetts. And so they're talking about this story of how they went down this path of converting from like a historically rich seg to a community to broadening the base.
And so there's obviously many different areas that people can use this for and help build out their membership.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I would add, I think to your question, I think one of the things that's interesting is, there's also like, let's say like, I'll think of this as we talk about a lot of benefits, right? So make it a very specific, you're like, okay, food assistance like SNAP has a certain income limit, but utility assistance has a much higher income limit in most states, especially in Massachusetts, for example. You could be a family of four with like 110K and you probably still get utility assistance because it is very expensive and heating is a big part of people's costs in the winter. Meanwhile, like Medicaid has a much lower threshold. So what ends up happening is a household might not know that they could get assistance even when they're working for childcare utilities. And so that's where we find a lot of uptake and curiosity and learning and applications is when it's something that's unexpected that is able to like help the members in that time of need. I would say, I'm excited to kind of bring this to life. I think two things I would highlight, which I think, ties especially to this session and this webinar is, we work with credit unions of all sizes. It's really important to highlight that. Our smallest credit union has a staff of 7 and is a $40 million credit union. Our largest is like over 3 billion in assets and like 200,000 members. And so the range of members we serve is important for us because we actually recognize that especially small credit unions are like the soul of the credit union movement, and they're actually working in the community a lot. And so part of what we've invested a lot at Starlight is how do we make it turnkey for a overworked, understaffed credit union that's small? And so I want to kind of highlight that because I think sometimes people think of QSOs only serving large credit unions, but we actually want to kind of really broaden the base and serve everyone we can. And so one of the ways we do that is we have all the marketing assets for every credit union prepared for you with every team inside the credit union, whether it's your lending team, your business development team, your community outreach team. We're available in English and Spanish. We deliver everything sort of almost automatically for your membership. And then if we have the right relationship with you and we can do it, we can even like schedule the emails for you, plan it out for your communication, help you do the data analysis. So a lot of what we're obsessed with is like, how do we reduce the friction for you to just serve the mission once you're committed to wanting to do that? And so that's one thing I would really highlight is probably important is that as you think about the small credit unions in the CCUA region, like we want to serve and work with all of you, and we will make it smooth enough for you to be able to bring this to life and serve your membership.
That's good to know, especially for any of the small credit unions that are on the line, that that assistance to help drive the message is available to you. I appreciate
Awesome.
everyone joining today for our latest episode of Webinar Wednesdays. Thanks for joining, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank
Thanks.
you very much, everyone. Bye bye.